Wayne the Boat Guy did a video on why sailboats aren't more popular, and I can add to that. This week, the top 5 reasons sailboats are bad, but also the top 5 reasons you should buy one anyway. First, the bad. You're boat shopping and you love the idea of a sailboat, but the powerboat is just much easier. Which is kind of the first point, isn't it? The learning curve. Most sailors start very young. Our dads had boats, or someone else exposed us to sailing very young. And as it does, sailing grabbed us like a virus and never let go. Sailing is like motorcycles like that. If your dad had one, odds are you will too. But imagine your first day of ownership of a powerboat. How would you learn to use it? Well, you'd stick it in the water, usually making a ridiculous spectacle at the boat ramp. Once it's in the water, you start it up, you load a few of your favorite people in, and you hit the throttle. Out into the lake you go with nothing more than a steering wheel to fiddle around with. If you even understand the basics of driving a car, you'll be able to operate a powerboat pretty easily. Your first day with a sailboat, however, is a lot different. Most people wouldn't even dream of leaving the dock on a sailboat until they knew what they were doing, or at very least had someone else with them who does. Sailing is a learned activity. Someone who's already done it has to teach you to do it. The ability to do it is passed on, which in the days of infinite knowledge via YouTube University is much easier than it used to be, but you still have to learn an entire world of stuff beforehand. The terminology alone pushes people away. A rope is a line, there's port and starboard, bow and stern, bow lines and halyards, and bulwarks and transom. A floor is a sole, and the thing that kills you is a boom. That one kind of makes sense. Turning around is a jibe, unless it's not a jibe and it's a tack, and docking is mooring, and learning language is boring. On this channel, I hate terminology, and I've been given crap many times for just not using it, because I don't like scaring people away by acting all high and mighty because I used the word rope, or didn't say rode, or swivel, or gimbal. I know all the words, but unless it's a safety concern, I don't care which word you use. I just want you to come sailing with me. So the learning curve is steep and often difficult, but counter argument, there's something wholly satisfying about being able to do it, to learn to operate and successfully make a sailing boat go under just the power of the wind. It's witchcraft, and you really should give yourself a pat on the back if you can figure out how to do it. How many powerboat trips have you had where at the end of the day you gave yourself a pat on the back and said with pride, I operated a steering wheel today? Number 2 on why sailboats aren't so popular. We need wind, and yes, that's true. A powerboat can just go wherever it wants, whenever it wants. But if there's no wind, a sailboat won't really go anywhere. Or will it? Unless we use the engine, and despite what weirdly seems to be popular belief, most sailboats do have engines. Mine has a big one inside, and it can drive along for hours and hours under power, just like a powerboat. I just play with the steering wheel. But on those super calm days, most sailboats will just sit there at the dock unused because there's no wind to push us along. I tend to use the engine to leave the slip anyway, and I head to the local swim hole for the day, but I never go much further. We don't like running the engine at all, especially not all day long. If we did, we'd own a powerboat. My argument to that point is yes, we really can't go anywhere when there's no wind, and it sucks, but if we wait for wind, we can go anywhere, literally anywhere in the world, and it's cheap. There's a YouTube person who went from the West Coast all the way to Hawaii on a 23-footer. We crossed the Atlantic to the Med in Europe, the Pacific to Asia, and all over the Caribbean, all powered by the wind. A great example is Georgetown, Bahamas. You can get there in a $1,000 sailboat, no problem. People do it all the time. But it's just sailboats there, hundreds and hundreds of sailboats. No entry-level powerboats because their fuel just can't get that far. You literally have to sail to get to the coolest places. But yes, if there's no wind, you won't really be going anywhere. While I have you, did you know I have a second YouTube channel called Charlie the Truck, where I'm building a box truck to drive across America? I'm excited because the solar panels came today, all 1,700 watts of them. I'm going to release a new video in the next couple days, so I hope you'll pop over there and hit subscribe. And point number 3 against sailboats. They're slow. And yes, mind-bogglingly slow. It's honestly the worst part of sailing for me. Even the fastest sailboats are horribly slow. My boat, for example, trudges along, powered by the wind, mind you, at about 7 knots. That's 8 miles per hour or 13 kilometers per hour. It's horribly slow. It's mind-numbingly boring. I read a lot of books. The little powerboat you could buy defeats the laws of physics because it's not in the water, it gets out of the water itself. As the powerboat speeds up, it planes up on top of the water and skips across the surface where it doesn't have to displace water as it moves along. Typically, sailboats can't do this. They're displacement hulls. They're very heavy because they need a big keel on the bottom so they don't fall over. And as they move forward, they push water out of the way and displace it. So even putting a Miami-style engine package on the back of a sailboat won't make a difference. The boat itself is in the water displacing water. It can physically only go so fast. And that's basically it. I hate this part about sailing, especially when traveling a great distance. It's so boring. But I suppose the counter to that is I get to be at peace with my thoughts, with the wind and the waves, which may explain why whenever I come back from a sail, even a short one, I'm at peace, I'm relaxed, I'm serene somehow. It's a really cool feeling everyone seems to have after going sailing. You're tired, but somehow worry-free. Anything that was bothering you is gone. There's a magic to it that you won't find on a powerboat. It's weird. And the other side of the slow coin is this. It's free. I've sailed into the New York Harbor, St. Augustine, all over the Great Lakes, Cleveland, Toledo, Detroit. I've been sailing in and out of Miami more times than I can count. All for free. And I will contest, the best way ever to arrive in a new place, any way you can imagine, is by sail, just as we did thousands of years ago. Sailing into St. Augustine for the first time is a spiritual experience. Fight me in the comments, I'm right. And sailing into the Bahamas, there's something lost with the drone of an engine and reliance on gasoline and oil and fuel filters and the smell of combustion. Sailing into harbor is the only way to arrive in a place properly. And one last point on slowness, I will say that in a racing environment, sailing does not feel slow. I've ridden motorcycles well over 100 miles an hour, and that feeling you get of being on edge, but in control, but not in control, the feeling of freedom and the power, it's exactly the same feeling you get on a sailboat at hull speed with the sails hardened up, rail in the water, as you round a mark in a pack of 10 other sailboats doing the same thing right on the edge. The feeling is the same. Point number 4 against sailboats. It's hard to go solo. And yes, it is harder. It's less safe if you're by yourself. What if something happens? You fall overboard, a health emergency. A powerboat is very easy to use and by nature, easy to use by yourself. A sailboat is much more difficult and I don't really have an argument for that fact. Sailing is dangerous and it would always be better to have somebody with you. Now, people do this stuff alone. They sail around the whole planet alone. I've made many miles alone. It's a lot harder, especially when you're docking the boat alone. You have to be particularly good at sailing to really go it alone for any amount of distance, but if you're just looking to lake sail and not do any major trips, alone is fine. The hardest part for me is when I'm alone trying to get on and off the dock in the wrong wind. Backing out of the slip when the wind's pinning the boat to the dock without another person to push off at the front is really hard and usually results in a messy situation with people laughing at me. I'd like to sail alone when the wind is pushing me off the dock because it's much easier. And point number 5, it's more work. And yes, sailing is work. It's hard work sometimes. You check the weather religiously a week in advance before a big voyage. And not just the weather, but more so the wind. Windy and Windfinder are on your home screen now and you open them almost hourly leading up to your departure. You ready the boat, making sure everything's stowed or lashed down. You make ready the halyards and sheets. You check the rig tension, secure the lifelines, check the engine oil, uncover the main. You make ready the life vests and maybe harnesses and jacklines if you're going offshore. Underway, you hoist the sails, you trim sheets, you play with the outhaul. The sailor never seems to just sit back and relax, but for the sailor, this is relaxed. Trimming a 1/4 inch at a time to move the second decimal place on the knot meter. That is the beauty of it. This is all work for the able-bodied and motivated person. And maybe that comes from a common misconception from non-sailors. Leisure boaters that came to get a tan and a little bit tipsy, we sailors aren't doing this to lay down and bask in the sun. We're doing it because we love sailing. Trimming sails and exceeding hull speed is our basking in the sun. Finding the power of the wind is relaxing for us. It's work, but not always. Sometimes we set the autopilot, put our feet up, and open a cold one. But if you're anything like me, that few minutes of relaxing is spent studying the telltales on the sails, thinking about how much vang tension is on right now, and watching the surface of the water a few hundred feet away for more wind. Sailors tend to be a mentally active bunch of people. We're always watching and analyzing everything, studying and tweaking things, always needing to understand how things work, why things do what they do. Powerboats just bore us. Do me a favor, leave a comment below giving one piece of advice to someone thinking about buying their first boat. Why should or shouldn't it be a sailboat? The mission here at Lady K Sailing has always been to get more people sailing more easily, and I couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much to the patrons who give as little as a couple of bucks an episode to make this all possible. I couldn't do it without your help. And if you'd like to help, please consider becoming a patron. Until next week, friends, keep the heavy side down, but not too far down. Don't forget to check out Charlie the Truck. We'll see you